I'm thrilled to be here with nonfiction development producer Erika Hardin. That is how you say your name, right? All these years? I've always wondered.
No.
It's not Hardin.
Incorrect.
Hardin.
No, it's not. Unless you were in the second grade, and that's kind of back when that one was
So
widely used.
it's Jablonski. I've had it wrong this whole time. No, it's Erika Hardin. I know that. I think I've laughed in that edit room more with you than anyone else by far over the last.
We've been so amused with ourselves on probably more than any entertainment we've created. We've been personally entertained.
True. The things that went on in the edit room were better than the actual tapes that came out of the edit room.
Some of our edits, we just literally were like so self-satisfied. Like you put in a sound effect and like a cut lands on it, and we're just like, oh my God,
we're making it for us. We bring it to the network executive, and they're like, "Who is this show for?" And they're like, "Well, it's for us." Okay, nonfiction television development. What does that mean?
Well, in the capacity I worked in most frequently, I was in-house at a production company in their development department. And your primary job is to come up with new shows to sell so then your company can make them.
I feel like the whole world of development is such an enigma to where like I feel like people don't know about it. There's a lot of misconceptions about it. Like a lot of, I think people don't even realize it exists. I've always thought from like a money standpoint, it was a good thing to work in terms of a department because there's more shows that don't get made that are funded by networks than that do get made. If you think about that, like if you just work in production, you are working in the like 10% of tapes that get made. But if you're working in development, you are usually working in 100% of ideas that are financed to see if they're worth getting made.
But so much of your stuff never gets made. So like you can pour your heart and soul into a project and then nobody ever sees it. Whereas if you work on a production, your show is probably being made to go on air.
Well, that's, I would say, the bad side. I think if I were to look at the good of development, it's the consistent flow of money and clients because there's so many projects that get funded. And if you look at the bad side of it, yes, you work on so many things that don't get made, and not because they don't deserve to. A lot of things don't get made for the wrong reasons. But then it also kind of becomes a little bit of a struggle. Like when someone's like, "Oh, what do you do?" And you're like, "I work in TV." They're like, "Oh, what shows do you work on?" And you're like, "A bunch you've never seen." Right. And like they just start to look at you like you're a liar. Does that happen? That's happened to me so many times.
Yeah, if you can't be like, "Oh, that's my show." Like you have like 2 shows, and you kind of whatever part of the development you worked on, like because shows have so many different elements to them. Like you could have done like all the casting and development, but the people you found in development to get the show sold aren't part of the cast that's then on the series.
It's a really weird
it's just a lot of what you do is to get it to a point that they sell it, and then a production team comes in and takes it and runs with it. It's kind of like
it's like
use
having
a football analogy. You get
ahead.
it to the 1-yard line, and then somebody vultures your touchdown. Except your whole job is to get them to that 1-yard line. So
yeah, and then you don't get really a lot of credit for it. Or like you have a baby and someone just takes your baby. And you're like, "Yeah, we're gonna raise it from here. Thanks, we're good."
And you're like, "Goodbye, baby." But I don't know.
It's tough. I think when you're an artist, you make things because you want to see them come to fruition, and then it's kind of weird. You make like 90% of it, and then someone else like kind of just takes over, and then often it takes over and kind of takes away what might have been good about it. I know a lot of things I've developed. Then you see the final output on TV, and you're like, why did they do this, or why did they change this?
Yeah, it's hard because you envision it a certain way, but then you have no control over how it gets executed. You know, you're like, "Oh, if I had done it, it would have been this way." But I think that's true of anything, right? In production, there's like so many options and a million ways to go. And it can be hard when you're trying to get people on board of your project to sell them on a certain vision. And then if something goes in a different direction, you kind of feel like, it's not
Well,
quite
you
what
think
we
too of how much time you can spend on a development tape too. Like, when you go into production, they don't spend as much time to really perfect it because there's deadlines and the show has to air. But when you're in development, you can spend months to a year re-tinkering something to get it right. So, I mean, that's maybe part of it too, that you just spend so much time to get something to a certain place. And then once you hit production, it's almost like there's not as much time.
Production is a division of labor. You know, everybody, I mean, not that their skills and their talents don't overlap, but in general, the lighting guy focuses on lighting and like the casting person does all the casting. When you're in development, you try to do a little bit of everything. You're kind of not fully like a one-woman show because you have coworkers typically, or I did in a lot of things, but like
A smaller crew. But to your point though, when I've done productions, that were funded. When I had smaller crews, I always think that the product usually came out better.
If you have a good relationship with a person or if you've worked together a lot, yeah, I mean, actually, that's not entirely true. I've picked up people that I never worked with, and we just, like, kinda knew what we were going after. But I like that, like, lightness, that, like, run and gun kind of production too, where you're just kind of all just, like, trying to get what you can get, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, it reminds you of, like, film school or when you're just starting out too and you're just making stuff for fun with your friends, you almost have to make it like that because you don't have the resources, and then this is almost like the better version of that. You're like, "Wait, I can get paid now to do this in that same style," and, like, it's a little challenging, a little difficult, but it often breeds creativity, which I think is a huge part of making a good development tape, is making a lot with a little.
And in general, development is a volume game. I mean, as much as you wanna craft an idea for a year or make it perfect, like, it really is about getting stuff out there. You could get 4 tapes out there, 4 different ideas, 'cause you never know what's really gonna land. I mean, anybody who tells you they know what a hit's gonna be while they're making it, I mean, nobody knows.
Yeah, you have to cast a wide net, and then you have to deal with mandates, people going like, "Bring me the next Duck Dynasty or the next this," and then it really almost never works out because by the time you bring them that, that show is already kinda becoming in its twilight of, like, interest, so you always have to kinda look for the next thing that no one knows is gonna be the next thing.
I mean, I was thinking about that because in our industry, especially as of late, it's always about they kinda run an idea into the ground. Like, if somebody comes up with something that's a hit, they're like, "Now we want our version of that." And, like, when you think about the things that actually have been hits, like, they aren't, like, following suit of something that just came out. Like, I mean, like, K-pop Demon Hunters, it wasn't like, a million people were making these types of shows, and then but now they probably are all like, "What's our K-pop
Yeah.
Demon
It's like
Hunters?"
that episode of The Simpsons when Itchy and Scratchy start off with a fight, and one pulls out a spoon, the other pulls out a knife, and then one has a gun, one has a cannon, and then it just goes around the world with, like, giant guns outgunning each other. It's the same thing. It just beats they do beat good ideas to death, and then they're kinda just like, "Oh, man." There's no fear of, like, jumping the shark in, like, nonfiction
I
television
mean, it used
development.
to be just a little bit more open, but then, everything became about existing IP and, you know, we became really risk averse in television, just, so people stopped kind of going for the more fringy ideas and wanted to do things that they thought were safe and would definitely get greenlit, you
Yeah, it's
know?
funny how that happens. I mean, we've been in so many meetings in early stages where someone's like, "Let's really roll the dice on this. Let's break conventions." And like by week 2, you're like, "Let's do exactly what the History Channel is doing and just copy someone else." They just lose all of that risk factor because they're just worried about protecting their jobs, I think, to where like, taking risks is exactly that. You're taking a risk. And if it fails, you have to explain why. I mean, we have also experienced where developing a food show for a food network. And someone will go, "Hey, my uncle's Steven Spielberg." And they're like, "Yeah, but like, can you do cupcakes?" Or you're like, "What?" And I remember you and I always sitting there going like, "It's Steven fucking
Right, it
Spielberg.
would always be like,
Let's
"Well, you
bring him in."
haven't done a Bravo show before," and you're like, "I know how to I
Yeah.
can
I'm not
figure it
it's like
out," like
I'm literate. I can write a horror movie and a comedy because they both use words, like, it's not
or
like
just
you
I'm
can
aware of how to shape a story for, like, a certain audience or certain, entertainment value or, like, a certain.
I always thought that was so weird about the development world where, you would have access to maybe some great filmmaker, and then the executives are like, "I don't know, like, can Spielberg really make a cake show?" Now, obviously, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it'd be like a name person maybe who hasn't done that, and they would just have these reservations about giving them that opportunity because you'd be like, "Well, like, Fred Smith over here, he's done 4 cake shows," and I thought that
I
whole
don't know, I
process was
feel
so
like I
odd.
maybe disagree with you on
You
that one.
do? You don't want Steven Spielberg making a
No, I
food
do, I'm
show?
saying I feel like more than anything, it kinda bent towards it had to have, like, a celebrity attachment.
Well,
It
I
had
mean,
to be Steven Spielberg's
on camera maybe, or are you talking about behind the camera?
I'm talking about in any facet. Whatever you were pitching, it was like, well, who are you gonna attach to it?
But I mean as like a showrunner or a director, I always thought it was weird. Some of the companies I would work for outside of yours would always just be like reluctant to roll the dice on what I thought was like a surefire, like even if it goes wrong, like you know what I mean? Like that's such a heavy hitter. That's such an interesting person. It's an interesting artist. And they would kind of find ways to be like, well, I don't know, like it's a cupcake challenge show. Like, is Steven gonna be able to handle this? I'm like, pretty fucking sure. It's Steven fucking Spielberg. Or there would be instances like that where someone has proven to be a great storyteller, but maybe not in the bucket of like, AQ soaps,
Got
and
it.
someone would just have that reservation. But I do agree with you in that I have also seen if someone has the dumbest idea on earth, like if it's just you or I who are not celebrities, we would get denied immediately. But if you're like a former NBA player, a former, major league player, you're someone who's like maybe a celebrity, but not even in the world of TV. If they have that same exact idea, like that'll just get through the door
It's a s
further. And they'll be like, well, what about this idea
it's a
about,
safer bet.
you know, painting a wall? They're like, well, they like entertain it so much because it's just brought to them by
Well,
someone.
there was that era. I don't think anymore it works. It's not as simple either. Like, you can't just be like, "Well, I'm LeBron James making the painting a wall show." We had that moment where you could. It just, like, keeps getting
Yeah.
harder and
Things
harder.
go in ebbs and flows.
But, yeah.
Let's talk about the first project we met on. Do you remember the first project we met on?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't my tape. I had done the casting
You're a
for it.
bounty hunter. We're both bounty hunters, essentially.
It was, for alien abductees.
Yes.
It was a support group for alien abductees.
Did I cut it?
You did cut it.
Okay, but we met on set because you shot in our studio.
Yeah.
Remember, you shot like a almost like an Alcoholics Anonymous style
I
of
found
alien
all
people.
the abductees
You
that
did?
were in the tape.
Okay, so you handled all the casting.
I did all the casting.
So
for that.
go through that process. Like, how did you find these people?
It's just a lot of outreach, and a lot of interviewing. The one thing about alien abductees is they seem to like to tell their story, so they're actually fairly easy to find.
I do remember wondering if you thought these people were telling the truth because there were some pretty wild stories. And I am long been like the paranormal person. Like I've always been into that stuff. So I don't like disparage those people. But when you do reality shows, so like I almost had them as two distinct separate things in my life. I used to write for paranormal magazines before I got into film and TV, and then I got into film and TV, and I kind of looked at them as two different things. But then once they started to bleed over, I definitely started to experience a lot more questionable ones, I would say, in the film world where I'm like, this person's full of shit, But then I also would come across people that I thought they were authentic. With your tape, I remember the Canadian guy.
Yeah,
I think I believed him.
I believed him.
Was it just because he had a Canadian accent, or
No, he was like very sweet. I don't know. He was very like affected by his experience.
Yeah.
And his story was unbelievable, but at the same time, like, it wasn't so nuts. Like, I feel like some of the other people, they were like reptilians, or they were like,
oh yeah, went too
children
far.
on planet,
The one
or
girl
like
was out of
they
her
just
mind.
had a lot of elements to them that, like, you know what? I don't want to say for sure what happened, but just this.
And I'm no doctor, but the one girl, it's like she would be like, well, a whole team of people brought me back to their UFO, which looked just like a van with no windows. You had a traumatic experience that you are regressing into aliens, lady.
There were a handful
one
of
lady
people
was
that
nuts.
I interviewed that I was like, I feel like you're coping with some sort of abuse by attributing it to this. I'm not a professional in the mental health field,
obvious,
so I didn't. And with a lot of those people, it is kind of a thing. I'm like, I don't want them to feel taken advantage of or anything. But if they want to talk about their experience, like.
So when you cast that tape, you've got like the Canadian guy who seems fairly authentic, and you got the one girl who's kind of like, oh God, there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
Do you know that going in, and do you still put her in the tape to give variety and diversity? Are you being judgmental as a producer in terms of credibility with these people, or are you trying to give a mixed bag? Like, what's your thought of developing that? Is it to show a network, hey, look, there's a full gamut of stories when it comes to this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like, you want to like cover the breadth of the experience, right? If you're, like, I interviewed a ton of people for that. I mean,
how many do you think you went through?
I mean, the part of casting is like you reach out to just hundreds of people. They don't all get back to you. There were these people that really were like affected by whatever happened to them, and they were wanting to talk about it, and they were wanting to find people that it also happened to so that they didn't feel so alone. Their experiences were different, which makes for an interesting element if you're doing like a support group, because then they're kind of like, they're almost unsure if they believe one another.
Yeah.
It's like an interesting element to that too. Like, some people think their experience is real and other people's aren't. And that's kind of interesting.
I don't remember who. I remember those two people.
There was the other woman that was like she had like experiences where she had these like downloads from like about like they told her like the cure for cancer was like something that we used every day.
Is she gonna like share it with us?
I don't know.
Just keep withholding that information.
But yeah,
I don't remember her. I can't Visualize
I
her. I
think that
remember the host, I remember the Canadian, I remember the girl, I don't remember anybody else.
you're just kind of like, you don't wanna tell the same story over and over. You're trying to show, again, for development, and particularly in that kind of television development, you're not looking for one-offs or specials. You wanna sell what we'd call a returnable series, something that's gonna have multiple episodes and multiple seasons, ideally. So you wanna show that your format isn't gonna get stale
Within
after
within the
yeah,
sizzle.
they
Yeah.
that there's gonna be these people that say this happened to them, these people that say that happened to them. There's gonna be this chance for friction with people, there's gonna be this chance for real connection with people. Like, with a sizzle, you're trying to do a lot with a little. You're trying to show all the potential, um, that the series could have, while also explaining the idea really clearly. That one was very clear, but you wanna also that one was tough, I'll say. That was gonna be a tough sell to me.
To the network.
I always thought, because it's a lot of talking. You need action, that you need.
I remember in the tape, we put some recreation elements in there
Yeah,
to help amp
yeah.
it up. It is just strange though, where you just don't know what's going to sell. Like I get what you're saying, but you can also look at that tape and go, well, these stories are so sensational. You really, the story in itself should sell the tape. But all this we know too is so much about timing and so much about politics, right? It's easy to kind of go like, oh, politics, but like there is a lot of like who in development, who like I know executives who have greenlit series for friends, be like, yeah, let me throw you a bone and like keep your
Well,
job alive at that production company by giving you. It's not that the show wasn't like great, but it just like wasn't
but a
that
part of
worthy.
development is being, and your production company at large is being people that they like to work with. Do you deliver your things on time? Do you deliver them under budget? Like, all of these things go into, like, the ability of you to sell shows. Did you make a show for them that was a hit? Like, I mean, that's all a factor. With some of these tapes too, they're not like a fully formed format, or they can change. It could be like, we like this area, but we don't wanna do this show, like, and you kinda work with them to get what they think
Yeah,
is best for
you're
their
getting it
audience.
close.
Yeah.
So you've worked in development for over a decade for a lot of really big production companies and doing content for a lot of big networks. Explain for someone who doesn't know, what is a development producer? What do you do? Like, what is your job?
To have the idea and then shape it into something that would be a television series is a process in of itself. A lot of it is then also making the sales materials. So, like, a lot of what we did was make the sizzle reels, which are, essentially, a visual representation of what the show will be. Sometimes it's making pitch decks that explain the format too. So that's all part of it. Research, it's casting, it's everything. You're just looking for something to build on every day. And then you find a thing, you come up with the show format, you make the sales materials, you take it out and pitch it, and you start over again. And usually you have more than one project that you're working on at once. You're just constantly trying to come up with, flesh out, and then ultimately figure out how to sell ideas.
How did your career path kind of take you into development?
My friend was an editor, and she was like, "Oh, you like," had gone to film school back in the day. She's like, "Oh,
I forget, where did you go to school?
I went to the University of Colorado in Boulder."
Did you stay out in Colorado? Or did you come into New York?
I moved to Boston, and lived in Boston for a long time, which is where I started. I worked at a production company.
What did you study in school? What was your degree in?
I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Film Production.
Okay, so general production.
At the time, University of Colorado, it was really focused on experimental film because Stan Brakhage was a professor there,
Oh, nice.
and also Phil Solomon, and they made a lot of, like, experimental films. So, like, there was, like, one narrative film class when you're, like, in your senior year,
That's
you
interesting.
know?
That's kind of a very different approach, but it
Yeah.
also kind of sets you up for like, oh, by the way, there's no jobs in experimental filmmaking.
No, and even for me, like, I always, like, narrative. Like, I mean, the films I made in film school, like, I wanted to make, like, rom-coms or, like, dramas.
But I could see how kind of studying experimental film could later help you in making sizzles and development, because you are playing around with like alchemy to find what makes this tape work well. And then you're also many times developing, could be a new format or something that is, just different. So I actually think there's an interesting correlation there.
Well, the truth about sizzle reels and tapes is you're pitching them to executives that are watching a ton of them, right? And they can tune out quickly. So you're trying to, like, be entertaining and, like, get your information across.
We can't phone it in,
Yeah.
because also like I always had the same approach. Like I want to make the tape, make the person perk up.
The thing that we did very well and that I loved bringing to you, were, like, rip tapes or found footage tapes.
Which are
Because
very hard to make to begin with. Because you're working with limited resources, right? You know, explain what that is.
so, um, in development, since things aren't for broadcast, you can use whatever you want. You don't have to really worry about, like, you know, copyrights and whatnot. So when you're trying to explain an idea, you don't always have the budget to go shoot. You're not going to go shoot a full episode and cut it to show them how it works. So what you're going to do is instead find stuff that you can put together that'll ultimately like explain your idea. The hardest thing about that is making it look good
Yeah, because essentially you're
stuff.
cheating. We're cheating a lot. We're cheating shots, coverage, sound bites,
Mhm.
sound ups. And as a producer, one thing too, just for anybody like listening and watching, it's like, right, you did a great job at that, which is your job. I love when I do these other tapes for other people and they're like, hey, we'd like you to cut this tape. Can you go find all this footage? And I'm like, that's not my job.
That is the hardest. That's one of the hardest
I
parts.
love it when it tries to get dumped on me as the editor. I'm like, yeah, go find all that footage.
They're
And I'm
like,
like, yeah, are you going to pay for that time? Because that takes a lot of time to go find that content, rip it, download it. And you always
that's the
came
stuff you
so
should
prepared.
bring to the editor. Well,
Yeah.
also, I always had, like, a script too, which always, changed, obviously, as you're but,
But you
like,
always had a
I had a
plan. Yeah.
plan. The finding the footage is, like, almost something that I took a lot of pride in, like, I'd find sound bites that, like, were perfect, but you also need a ton because half the stuff you think is gonna work isn't gonna
And I don't know
work.
how you did that. But you would always find so much content to work with, which again, it's like working together as a producer and an editor. You're making my life easier, and then so I can make your edit better. Like you're bringing me things to work with. You know, you're bringing me material to work with, and I can go, oh, I know what I can do with that. Or
I mean, that's why we're so proud of those tapes, right? Because, like, the task at hand is pretty like, challenging, and you don't want it to look so cobbled together that, like, people can't follow it or pay attention, but we find exactly what we need.
it's so unconventional. No one is kind of thinking you would ever make content like that. So the whole idea of it is so backwards. And so it is difficult and challenging. And yeah, we would pull off some good ones. And then what also gave me confidence is throughout the years, I would see like other people's tapes, or people would often bring me tapes and go, "Can you make this better?" And I would look at it and be like, "Oh man, this sucks. Like this is terrible. Like no offense, but like we're so much better at this than like I think we really did kind of corner that." And I know we did so many tapes that as I kind of started going out and pitching stuff myself, people would start to recognize like they'd be like, "Oh, I know who made that tape."
Well, you were also the voiceover for most of them. You were you were kind enough to be the voiceover telling us, what the format is on top of the footage.
But even that, like that's a great example of see, earlier I was saying, okay, I'm an editor. It's not my job to go source footage. I mean, I can, but from a client relationship standpoint, like I want to get compensated for that. What's funny is you look on the flip side, right? We did a lot of times where you're like, hey, can you put a scratch track in? And that is different because listen, it's not that hard, even though like as a company, I provide that service separately of like, hey, recording a voiceover costs X. But I think, and there were times where you got me, I think, some extra dough for the doing some of that stuff here and
I
there.
feel like you mostly did me favors our whole, working relationship, but sure.
But the favors, but what's interesting is I did a lot of those voices narrating. And then what would happen is I started doing them for other clients. And then when I also started to find what happened is I would put in what was supposed to be a scratch track.
And
And
they
then the
would just
network
keep
would be
it.
like, hey, now we're going to replace it with like a real voiceover person. And then they would like hire a real voiceover person. And then they would often not like it as good as the voice I did. So then it did also start to pay off for me where I got some like voice jobs and I got some voiceover work and I got
You're
some other
really good at
things.
voiceover. I mean, you just, like it's so funny because you can be very cranky, and
Me? Me?
you would be, like, bitching and moaning and
Oh
then
yeah.
immediately
Oh
go
god.
and,
Yes.
and click into
That
it.
is the best.
You'd be like, "Anastasia, like, you gotta call this guy back." And, like, "Next week," and,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
just,
yeah.
like, jump.
That's pretty funny. That is a distinct memory being in that booth and you on the other side of the glass where I would just, the phone would be ringing. I'd be dealing with some other client and be like, motherfucker, this is some fucking bullshit. Next week on the
Yeah.
show, it's like you
You'd
just
be like,
have to.
3 chefs, 1 hour.
There is an art form to it. But the other thing is, as an editor, right? I've cut so many things throughout the years. Raw footage, you listen to tapes, you listen to professional voiceover artists, you listen to
Yeah.
producers, and I always just paid close attention to all of that. Of like, I essentially self-taught how to do voiceover, how to read scripts through listening to other professionals do it that I was cutting. Or like when I started producing, I would often think back to like the raw tapes I would watch. Like when I used to work at the news, I would work at different networks coming up at a film school. You would watch journalists, and some of them you're like, this person's fucking terrible, and this person's great. And when you look at the person who's good at it, you just take what they're doing. You start to kind of study them and steal and borrow from it, and you're like, I can do this.
It is an art because I remember there was a tape we needed, like, a female voice for, and I was like, "I'll just do it." I couldn't do it. Like, I would, like, be like, "I'll just walk in there like Matt does," and, like and I, like
I just did one recently for somebody. This is how ridiculous it's gotten. I just did one recently for somebody. It's like a father-son show, and it's like every week, my dad and I do this, and like I did the voice, and this is not my story. This is not my father. And then they replaced it with the kid, and they're like, "We're gonna go with your voice." I'm like, "You want me to speak in first person on behalf of this other person?" They're like, "Yeah, we like your voice better."
I mean, you were the voice of most of my ripped tapes. I don't
Yeah, and then when I would go to pitch meetings separately for other tapes, people would be like, "Is that your voice on that? We just watched a tape with you yesterday." And so, but the whole point, I think, a takeaway of that is when you're doing this stuff, sometimes people do want extra things, maybe that go outside of your purview of like job description, and you have to measure like what is a good risk and what's getting taken advantage of, right? Like again, some of the clients I have where they're like, "Hey, go find hours of footage," which is literally weeks of work.
so
No,
much
I'm not
work.
doing
That's
that.
all the
But to go into a
fucking
booth and record some VO, one, it's fun. Two, when we're doing it, I mean, we probably burned so many billable hours just laughing and doing dumb shit.
Yeah, because you do stuff that entertained us that wasn't gonna be in the cut for, like, you know? Do you remember that one where you were just, like, talking about whales? You're like,
Yeah.
"This show is about a
I came up
whale
with a
for
brand new
30
show.
minutes."
I by this point, we had done so many, and I had done so many tapes. I'm like, when is it gonna end? Because like it was always a show about everything. It's like this show is about light bulbs, this show is about walls, this show is about floors. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, can we do? Is it just about anything? And I remember I went on a really ranty diatribe. I'm like, why don't we make a show about a whale? We just film the whale all the time. We call the show Whale, and that's what it is.
No, I mean, a lot of it was entertaining ourselves, which is kinda what you have to do because 'cause you're getting really tired and you're getting really frustrated because things aren't working. Um So you make a joke or you do something stupid and then,
Yeah,
then you can refocus, or sometimes you just are like, "We have to stop for tonight," like, we're banging our heads against the wall.
yeah. We've done some long hours.
I mean, the problem is, like, there's so many options, and sometimes I just wanna try them all. It's like, "Well, what if we put this first? Well, what if we put this one first?" And that's not really the best way to go about it either. Like, at a certain point, you just, like, make a decision, make a choice, like, put it in, let's move on.
Yeah, you can get lost. I never looked at our working relationship that way, but I have worked for some people where they're like, let's try hip hop music, let's try country music, let's try classical. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
you're just randomly picking every option as opposed to kind of like having some reason behind the choice, you
You
know?
were always really good at finding, like, the track to start,
Music.
and some of it seemed, like, super on the nose. It'd be like, "This is a food competition, we're gonna use, like, Warren's" was it
Yeah.
Warrant cherry pie?
Yeah, hell yeah.
And
We use that.
like, that's the song is about
Sometimes the
sex,
most
but,
obvious
you know
sometimes the most obvious thing
Yeah.
is the best. Yes, I mean
Or
one
we're
of
gonna
the
use candy shop or, like,
yeah.
certain things that are just, like
'Cause
and
it's kitsch. The
yeah.
development tapes are kitsch.
They
I think they're
are
kitsch. They're
they're
kitschy. You're selling almost an idea as a brand, and most of them want to be fun. You know, like, most of the genres are like, you want it to be a fun ride. The first thing I would do is look at the script, and then I would spend a lot of time Googling songs. Like, if it's a food show, I would literally go, "Popular songs about food." It
Yeah.
might seem like an obvious thing, but I feel like I would watch other editors, and they would often not do that. Their go-to would be, like, stock music
I think
or, like,
or they wanna be
instrumental.
cool and they wanna, like I don't know. Or there was a period where, like, certain songs would be popular and everyone would use them in their
Oh,
tape.
yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I did use a hell of a lot of Britney Spears at
Yeah,
some point
which
in my
is
life.
fair. It's got, like,
Yeah, it was poppy. It's easy to cut to. You wanna cut to beats.
Yeah.
Bad editors cut, and then the music is disjointed from the picture. Like, good editors,
Oh,
uh,
your cuts
always do the
land
beat, like
on
a DJ.
stuff.
And the
Yeah.
thing is, it's hard to have visual elements cut to every beat of a song, but if you can do, like, the first 3 or the first 10 seconds of a song, if you can be in sync then, and then drift away from it, nobody notices, and then when you come to the end of the song, it gets back on beat to the cuts. That's usually I think, the trick to it. Like, it starts middle can go out of it. Maybe you have a couple cues, but then the end. But once you get a flow, it starts to kind of work together on its own. Like I can't tell you how many times I just threw a shot in and like, oh damn, that just landed right on the cut, right on the beat. And
Yeah.
so it starts to take a life of its own.
I know it always kind of felt a little bit effortless with you. Like, I know that's just experience and
We got
practice,
good. No, but
but,
we got
like,
good. Yeah,
yeah,
we got good. It's like,
I noticed, like, with a lot of tapes we made, like, I would bring you a script that kind of followed the same structure a lot, just because it's my personal style,
yeah,
like
there's a consistency.
like, we'd always kinda, like, start with something and then flip to the idea,
Yeah.
like
Well, we started to come up with our own brand of almost like a misdirect
yeah, but,
or like a
like, there's
hook.
a lot that you're trying to do in a tape.
Yeah.
You're trying to explain, like, why this show, so sometimes you have to explain, like, this is really, like, a trend, or this is really, like, a thing people are doing, or this is really a world that exists.
And there's formulas. Formulas are a good thing. Some people are like, "Oh, formula is bad." It is a good thing because when something works, you can repeat it and you know that it works. Like a 3-act structure has
Mhm.
always been a thing
Pretty much.
because it works. When you start making 5-act films, they start to go disjointing or this is too long. This isn't right.
I mean, you
It's
don't want a
bad.
sizzle that's long. People are not
Oh, and you want changes you can get a lot done in 30 seconds, right? So
yeah.
30 seconds to a minute, always music changes. And it also started to kind of just tie into where the content would change, like who is this? What's the format of the show? 30 seconds to a minute is all you really need.
I think our shortest tape was 90 seconds.
That was a good tape.
That was a good tape.
They're all good tapes. There's
Um,
not many that we did that I didn't like, except for that one. That
that
lady
they were not
ruined that. It
no,
wasn't.
it wasn't
No, she
her.
sucked. Yes, it was. Don't be nice.
No,
She
she was a
sucked.
nice person. It was, like, not a good pitch for the era. Like, that wasn't something that, like
It was a show about fabric. The fuck
I
was
didn't make
that?
that show.
Yes. There was yes.
Oh, wait,
Yeah, you did.
I
You just
did.
blocked it
I
out of
made
your
that show.
fucking mind
No.
because it was terrible. It wasn't terrible. You know what's
That
funny? Like, I actually started to go, okay, I could see maybe that, but it's the tone. It's kind of like it was so
it was
boring.
it was for a specific network that had a very, like,
Is that network still around?
not exactly.
Good.
Like, it
Who
was
watches that? You've got to be the most
that's
droll person in the world.
sometimes I had to do tapes that, somebody wanted me to make.
Yeah, you're a bounty hunter.
And
Yeah.
that is also fine. The one tape that I remember I got the assignment and I was like, "Oh, I don't wanna make this tape," that I brought you and we made an awesome tape. Remember that magicians one?
Oh yeah, for Netflix. That
Or
was,
for yeah, it
it
was
was with
just like
Netflix.
I
Netflix.
I was like, "Show about magicians," and, like but I love making tapes, right? The ones we haven't liked is when we felt the talent wasn't strong enough, and that
Yeah,
is
you're
just
forcing
to
something.
to to be enough to carry a whole show or series is a lot, and sometimes we'd be propping people up that and we do our best, and we try to show their skills and their commitment and their passions, but they just aren't like, they don't have that it factor,
Yeah.
or whatever they do isn't really big enough to be a show.
Well, and then speaking of magicians, sometimes the notes was always the worst part. The notes coming from above, like from the executives and from people, you're like, oh, here it comes. That they
But
think
that's part of it.
but
If you're
they,
gonna work in television, you gotta deal
I
with
know, but that's the
notes.
worst part of it because they're always just so
They're not
dumb.
always dumb.
Oh, a lot of times they're bad or just idiotic. The notes would be like, well, you just got to make them pop. And it's like, I'm not a magician. Like you can do a lot, but when someone doesn't speak well, like there are people who cannot formulate a complete sentence. Like, and when you want to be on TV, you kind of have to do speak in sound bites. There would be people
Yeah.
who would struggle to piece together words and you're like, how am I going to cut this?
Well, some of it is, like, how good you are as a field producer, and so I always thought I was pretty good, but I was usually working with talent that I thought was really strong. With some people, like, you're just not gonna get 'em to that level, that's not their energy.
People don't realize that's a whole side of making television, whether it's the news or reality shows or anything. Like you are producing the content. And sometimes people are like, what does a producer do? Well, a good producer is having a conversation with the on-camera talent, knowing that your voice won't be there later, and so you are pulling good sound bites out of them. Like you're helping them without them knowing it, tell a story
And you're
in a
trying to get them
cohesive way that
to
an editor can work with.
right, you're trying to get them to explain stuff in a quick, succinct, punchy way so that when you go to put it in the tape, like, they say what they do and it's, like, entertaining, or you get these personality bites out of them. I loved, like, going and shooting tapes, I
Yeah, me
really
too.
did. I was thinking when you were talking about how you weigh, like, what you'll do for a client, right? Like, will I do the voiceover? Will I find all this footage? Some of it in development, when you get brought an idea that you don't think is strong enough, is almost like that calculation, like, Do I tell them I don't think this is a good idea, or do I just do what they asked me to do to the best of my ability?
What's your answer to that?
I've
So
done both. I had an era where I really was pretty vocal when I didn't think something was strong enough, and not on everything, like, some stuff just isn't for me. All television isn't made for me,
yeah,
so some ideas aren't my cup of tea, but, like, yeah, let's try it, let's take it out and let's go, like, with the magician thing, it's like, I didn't think there was exactly a big market for that kinda content, but we made a badass
it was
tape,
a good tape.
and I was like, "I'm gonna," and even with certain talent that I didn't always believe in, sometimes I would go out there and get, like, good stuff out of them in a field, and I'd be like, "You know what? Like, if you produce them
Oh, yeah.
well,
Being able to admit you're wrong is
y
actually a really
yeah,
valuable skill in many things.
you figured out how to make it stronger." If you'll be like, "The hook of this idea is weak," or, "The hook of this idea, like, is fun for 2 episodes," and then I don't think, then we might work together to come up with something a little bit broader or something a little bit, like, more unique. Sometimes it's fixable what your issue with the format or the talent or whatever is.
I feel like looking back, I was way too honest. I should have just not cared. I should have
I
just said, "Yeah, sure, I'll make
I
this."
learned
I
that a
was
little
always
bit.
way too honest
I learned that a little bit
because people would
because
say, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "This fucking sucks."
but it also depends on, like, if you're in a development department and your job is to sell shows for that company, like, you have to be mindful of what you're using your resources for. Yes, we all kind of have, like, the same skill set in a way, like, we have different strengths and weaknesses, but your perspective is actually what your value is to the team, like, how you see things, how you tell stories, all of that stuff, like, your voice is actually, like, kind of what you're being paid for more or less.
Well, that
And
kind of
in a development department, like, if you're spending a lot of money just making everything and it's not, like, a strong idea, that's not really valuable to the company. We can take it and pitch it with, like, a Zoom interview or something, like, let's do something that's, like, much more cost effective
fiscally
and
responsible.
see if people like it, or, like, certain things you can float a log line to,
Well, that is a
the
mistake. A
executive
ton of
for.
I when I look at, independent producers who are trying to sell an idea, one mistake I see them do all the time. Literally, I just had a meeting 2 days ago with somebody. They're like and I feel bad for them, but they're like, "Hey, listen, I've already shot 2 full episodes. I just want the network to give me the money for 6 more." And I'm like, "Why did you shoot 2 episodes?" If a network is interested in something, you can tell by a paper pitch, by a casting tape. You actually don't need to do as much work as you think if you're pitching an idea from the outset to see if there's interest,
And
correct?
depending on what medium you work in, usually the people that are producing it are gonna want some input.
What it does is it kinda reveals that you don't know what you're doing. Like, when they're like, "Yo, I have this whole pilot shot and made," and I'm like, that's not a good thing," because there's no way that you secured the kind of financing that you would really need to make it look its best. So I think that's a mistake. It's gonna always underrepresent probably the idea,
Mm.
in production value. Most networks, if there's interest, they're not gonna be like, "That's perfect." Like, people just think that they're gonna go, "That's perfect. I'll give you $1,000,000 to make 10 more." Like, the development process is to develop it.
And the sales process of development is figuring out what are you selling and what's the best way to sell it. Like, if you're selling talent, you probably do need to go shoot with them, like, or Zoom with them, get a great, like, interview with them where their personality is popping, like, what they do is very clear, like, part of their process, like, what you're gonna see is very clear. If we're selling formats, then we can make a rib tape, we could maybe do it with paper as long as it's really flashy. If you're trying to sell, like, an episode of a show, you wanna put in your proof of concept, or your sizzle, like, you wanna plant the seeds of the potential storylines, but you don't wanna shoot a whole
Yeah,
episode
it's
with, like, an
jumping the
arc,
gun.
like,
Yeah, it's
it's
jumping
just
the gun.
it's
It hurts
more
you.
than you need to do, and also, yeah, they're gonna
It hurts you more than it helps you.
depending on where it's gonna go, because you're pitching it ideally, you're making something you can pitch to more than one place, you
Yeah,
know?
how many tapes did we do where we're like, "All right, this is the, country music channel version, so we're gonna change up a little music, we're gonna change up the ending, we're gonna change up maybe who the protagonist, the featured protagonist is and who the lead is." And then we, "All right, now we're gonna reconstruct this tape for MTV," and like, "Okay, maybe now we skew a little bit more hip hop music, and now maybe we put this character at the forefront." You're gonna change it around.
There's a few of those. In general, we tried to make tapes that you could take to more than one place as they were, just for,
Yeah, so you don't have to s
resourceful
but it's not
reasons, but
uncommon to do this. So when you make that pilot, like, I just so many people, when I kinda just meet them, I guess maybe outside of the film world, kind of like more independent people, they just always kinda have that pilot or more, and I'm like, "God," and I feel bad telling them, like, "You just wasted a lot of time and money and probably hurt yourself because there's so many iterations before." That's what I was saying earlier. I don't think people understand development. I don't think they understand the stages that, right, you could have done a paper pitch, that could have led to a character tape, that could have led to a sizzle, that could have led to a proof of concept. Also, by the way, all of those things could have been financed by the, entity that's interested, whether it's a production company or a network, and you're just spending all your own money kind of for no
I
reason.
will also say that part of the development process, typically, you take out what you made in-house on spec. You spent the production company's money and resources to make this sizzle or, to pay the people that work in the development department, whatever. Then they might pay for like an act 1 or a proof of concept, and then the pilot part of that process is them learning if they wanna work with your production company or the people that are working in production as well as the idea. Like, how well did the pilot making process go with that company? Like,
Yeah.
that's part of it. Like, did you sell yourselves and your style and your, workflows and all of that as well? So if you've already made the pilot, that's already done. They don't get to be part of that process and see, like.
Yeah, I think it's a big misconception for people trying to sell content. Looking at some of the shows we did sell, right? We've worked on shows that got greenlit, that went
Mhm.
to funded pilots, that went to funded series. What do you think made those tapes different than others that didn't maybe get the same success?
Well, the ones that we sold, it was always the idea or the talent at the center that was, like, the biggest selling point. I do think, like, how we explained it and did we do it in an entertaining way is obviously gonna help. Like, if we put you can not tell someone good if you don't execute your
Yeah,
stuff right.
you can take a good idea and execute it
But I do
poorly.
think our strength was explaining the ideas clearly and
Yeah, easy.
entertainingly.
It was we always kinda made it for dummies in a sense where, like, it wasn't overcomplicated, it was simple, it was short, but that's how all sizzle should be. This I would cut some sizzle for other people, and they would, like, write a fucking novel and put it on text on screen. I'm like, "This is boring. Who wants to read all these sentences? Like, that's a PowerPoint, that's not a sizzle." And so,
Yeah.
short, poppy, quick, flashy things. If you also can't explain it in that way, it's probably a good indication that you need to develop it further, that it's too complicated.
If you get a laugh out of somebody with your tape though, like, they're remembering your idea more than the tape before them that they didn't have any reaction to.
Yeah, and then let's not discount the whole process too, where you might pitch a format and an idea, and someone might go, "Well, I don't like the format, but I like the talent, and so what else can we do with the talent?" And
Yeah.
then you start to develop maybe a whole other show or concept based around the talent, or even just based around your abilities as a company to make the tape, right? Like that's happened a lot where people go. I've had that happen where people would say, "We're not going to buy this tape, but we love the style, so like
Yeah.
let's develop another show or an idea based around the same type of execution."
I don't wanna put I don't wanna say that I mean, I love our tapes, I think they were great sales materials, but a lot of what made them sell came way before the tape. It's clarity of concept,
Yeah.
strength of format, what you're selling, what you're trying to get in development, because everyone has ideas. People will be like, "Oh, I had the idea for American Pickers." I'm like, "Did you have the guys that did it?" And, like, we're really spending their money, and there's, like, the reals and they're really haggling, and they're really like, you have to bring something other than just, like, a broad idea. You can't just be like, "We should make a show about X." It's like, well, what are you selling? Like, usually in development, it's talent, it's either, like, a new idea that is completely yours and original, or it's access, like, do you have a relationship with the Houston Police Department to follow, like, this cold case that was opened or whatever? Do you have, like, the victims', like, parents and they're doing their own independent investigation? Like, what do you have? I hate that I bring up the word stake so much, but that is, like, what why are we gonna care?
Why are you
Like
invested as an
like
audience member?
yeah, and, like, why is the talent care?
Well, the recent success of Drama Box proves that more than anything, right? That what it's stakes every 30 seconds,
Yeah.
every 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds, there's something that changes, and that's what people are watching for. They want, immediate payoff and kind of risk and
That's because
drama.
television now competes with social media that is shorter form and it's cut just like that. So, you know, with all these different mediums, you have to think what can this one do that the other ones can't and like lean into that. So with television, you can really develop character, you can really like tell stories in a different way. So like if that's where you're pitching, if you're pitching like some, Hot Ones type format to like a vertical channel, it's different. I mean,
Yeah.
it's it's constantly, like, thinking about the end user, not just, like, the network, not just, like, what are people going to care? And if they and how do you make them care?
We also, I think, made a lot of tapes that I think were good ideas, good concepts, good formats, good talent, but they didn't sell. Why do you think some of that goes on where you have, like, we've all seen great ideas, great tapes not go the distance? Why do you think that
I
happens?
mean, there's again,
What are
I
the
feel like
variables?
the thing with development is any question people ask me about development, the answer is always depends. Like, it freaking depends. Like, it could be like, we had a really great tape that you cut that I wasn't part of, about those guys in the Bronx that made horror films.
Oh, yeah.
That was an awesome tape.
That was good tape. That was
Talent
actually the first tape I ever cut
that was
for
yeah, I hadn't met
that
you, but
company.
I saw that tape.
Yeah.
Um, but when they took that out to pitch that, the one place that thought it was great had just greenlit a different show about a bunch of guys in the South that made, like, horror movies.
Yeah, so
So
timing.
it's
I
fully
think timing.
timing.
For me, the answer is timing. I think timing is what makes or breaks
It's
the tape.
gotta
It's
it's
not
like
about how good or bad it is. It's about the timing of what else is on TV that's like it. What's the need for the genre? And then also, who are you pitching it to? Like, if it's a new guy at the network, if it's a season, like
yeah.
all of that is
Did they just
context and
greenlight a
timing.
big tentpole competition series? They don't need another one. Now they need, like, you know, high volume, low cost stuff to fill but this is all changed too, because we used to program television differently. Sorry, I know you wanna talk
No, we
about how it's
can.
changed, but
No, I know, that's fine. We can get into that. Well, just even like global things can affect a tape. When I was just getting going, working in TV, I think it was like my third job I ever had. I worked on a show called Lost, not like the
yeah.
scripted show, but there was a show called Lost. It was made by a production company called Jambalaya, and it was Conan O'Brien's production company, which was weird because I interned for Conan O'Brien in film school, and then when I got out of film school, one of the first shows I worked on was co-produced by him. It was like The Amazing Race. You took 3 pairs of people and you blindfolded them and you dropped them off in the middle of nowhere. Like they could be in Russia, they could be in Canada, they could
Mhm.
be in Florida, they could be in another country, they could be in another state. But the idea was that you take your blindfold off
And
and you
you
go, how do I get back to the Statue of Liberty? That was like the home base. And it was like a race. I thought it was a good show. We got 3 episodes in, and then 9/11 happened. And so 9/11 happened, and then the idea that they were given no money or resources to get home. So getting home meant like hiding on planes, hiding on boats, and it kind of revealed maybe some of the weaknesses of security around the world. And so, like, that was a huge taboo subject. As soon as 9/11 happened, anything to deal with hiding on airplanes, any of that, any type of global security, the show was canceled after I think 3 episodes just because of the taboo associated with something as simple as
yeah.
like illegal travel. So sometimes what's going on in the world can also make or break your tape.
I mean, the fact that you got to 3 episodes is almost a miracle. Like, the fact that any show gets made, like, it has to get
It's
there's
like trying to
so
win the lottery.
like, we had shows that were way up in development, and then that executive got fired, and the
Yeah.
new person comes in and just clears that person's slate, and we're like, "We were gonna make 3 shows with you." And now they're just like, We're changing directions,"
Yeah.
or the network gets folded into
Yeah.
something else, or
I had a series that we sold to a network with a popular celebrity attached to it. All he was supposed to do was go meet the head of the network for dinner to just like casually finish the deal. And he stood him up and didn't go. And the next day the show was gone.
Of
It
course.
just
You
killed
can't
it
blow
fucking
people off like that, it's all, like,
yeah.
relationships.
The amount of money that cost me as a human being and as a company, I still can feel today.
I mean, the one of the
And we tried replacing the host. We're like, "Hey, we'll go get this guy." I don't wanna name name. We're like, "We'll go get that." They were like, "No."
the
It
bridge had been burned.
yeah. Off of one guy's poor decision. And there was no like, "Oh, I got sick." It was just like almost
He didn't
and then
even just
as
say, like, "I can't make it," did he?
no. And
'Cause
that
that's
nope, and
pretty
that
egregious to just, like
he stood him up. And then also, as I got to kinda get a little more familiar with the person, you start to go like, "Why isn't this person more successful?" They're successful, but they're not like A-lister. They're kinda a little bit behind. and then you start to go, "Oh, this is like a trend." You're almost like self-sabotaging. Like, not, someone can be self-sabotaging, addicted to drugs or you can kinda just
Be
do
afraid of
these
success.
career killer things. I've met a few people like that who you say, like, "Why isn't this person bigger?" And you start to get around them, you're like, "Oh, you actually self-destruct by doing things like that, by just being, complaining or not showing up to an important meeting like that." And then it's
Well,
kinda like, "Well, I got fired." Like, "Yeah, you brought it on. Thanks for letting us know."
fortunately, I've never had an individual just tank something. You work with, like, literally insane people all the time, like, your stories are
This place is a hub, right? Right. I think when I first met you, I probably told you some stories of what it's like here, and I would imagine you were probably like, "This guy's probably
even now, I've
embellishing."
known you for over a decade, and you tell me stuff, and I'm like, "What? That didn't happen."
And then you come in one day on a Tuesday, right? And then you have
And then
seen
I meet the person you're talking about, and I'm like, "Yo, that guy is
it's
nuts."
it's real. This is real.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
This place
you're
attracts
a magnet for
lunatics.
I mean, partly because you let it. I mean, whatever. You like freaks and weirdos, and that's
Well,
fine.
do you remember when we're gonna have to bleep some of this out, but do you remember when, we were offered to, like, for, um, and then, like, I was like, "Let's do it," and then Anastasia and our lawyer were like, "We're gonna go to prison." And I'm like, "I can't be sure of that." And they're like, "No, this is a criminal offense." And I'm like, "Let's just do it. It'll
Oh
be
my god.
fun."
Yeah, your, risk, like, tolerance is very high. You can ride a line that I don't ride.
I do remember you saying to me at one point, not that it's related, you're like, "You're the nicest mean person I've ever met."
Did I say
I was
that?
like, "That's such an interesting adjective."
I mean, Matt, you've made me, like, so mad on so many occasions, but, like, I love you to pieces. I
Yeah.
can't explain it.
No,
Like,
yeah, we have it.
you like to piss people off. You like to push buttons. You like to say things that I don't even know half the time if you believe them or if you just, like, know it's gonna get to somebody. But you just, like you like to stir a pot, like, it's fun for you. I don't know if you just, like
Only in this
'cause
space.
'cause you're so entertained by yourself that you like to bait people into stuff and then, like, keep, like, a bit going. I don't know. But yeah,
That's
you're
me
you're
being a troll, a bit of a
you're a
troll.
bit of a troll. But back to development.
Yes, back to
Going back to
this.
what you were saying, like, we were talking about how rare it is to get something greenlit because of timing from all these things. It goes in the other direction because one of the things we did sell, we pitched with a really good tape, and at the time, they were like, "We're not doing any more, like, competition
Which
formats or
was this,
something," the
the
Girl
Girl
Scout
Scout
one.
show? Yeah.
And then a year later and I think that's based on the strength of the sales materials, you know? Also, it was access. I had a relationship with
It came back
them.
around.
They
So
but a year later, they were like, "We wanna do this show."
so they initially, rejected that idea to bring it to series, and then a year later, they called you, were like, "Hey, let's go after that,"
Yeah,
because it
"Hey,
was about
remember
timing.
that tape? Like, do you
Yeah.
still have that relationship? Like, let's talk about how we can make this work." And then
That
they
was a
made
good
that show.
idea.
That was a good idea, but again, that
And
was,
it
like, a
was
unique access.
eh
I had a relationship with
yes,
them.
access, and then there's a familiarity based around the brand. Who
Yeah.
doesn't know about Girl Scout cookies? So that show was a cooking competition show where it was, inspired by, like, Girl Scout, ingredients, right?
Yeah, and the
Um,
original idea for it was bigger. Like, it was very, like it was, like, more like Bake Off where it was, like, outside, and there was, like it was very camp,
well,
whatever,
so
like
that to that point too, you have to know how to pivot as someone pitching and developing shows, right? I think that's another mistake people make. They pitch an idea and they're like, "This is my idea. I'm sticking to these guns," and no idea really stays like that. Every tape we've ever done has always changed and evolved or devolved, but like for someone pitching an idea, you have to understand that like it's gonna change.
if there's, like, an ethical thing that you need to stick to your guns for, sure. But for the most part, like, no, like,
It's like part of the
and part of
process.
it isn't even like, it goes out of your hands at a certain point, it's production and the network going back and forth on budget. So if you wanted to do this thing that had a bunch of night shoots in it, and they're doing the budget, and they're like, "You gotta cut that out," then your format
Yeah,
changes,
you
you know,
can't
like
fall in love too much with your idea. I
no.
worked on shows where it started out as like 2 best friends moving in together, and they're like, "What if they were 2 enemies who moved out?" And it's like the complete fucking opposite of where it started.
But I was gonna say too, one of the things in development that I'm, like, kind of overlooking here that I did, but wasn't my strong suit is, like, I would make the materials, I like making the materials. I like field producing, I like working with you in the edit, probably my favorite part of it, right? Um, Usually my boss would take them out and pitch, and that's something that is you can go and just press play and shoot. They show them the tape and expect that to do all the work for you, or you can,
Yeah.
you can Don Draper it a
I
little
think
bit and
that's a
sell it.
mistake. As an industry I think it's because from a sales standpoint, outside of here, if I apply it to other things I do, like teaching or instructing or coaching, if you're coaching something you don't know, or if you're selling something you don't know, even if you don't know it 10% less than someone who does, like that's a weakness. And I think that actually hurts the process. Like if you're streamlining it and kind of not having, I don't know, a closer tie to it. I think that's a mistake I think there's a lot of things that the industry does wrong or could do better, but just the idea of like that there's always these separate, well, like you did all the work, now this guy's gonna go
Also,
pitch
it's
it.
a thing that we completely lost in the pandemic. People stopped going and pitching things. There, you remember all the legends of television that was like sold it in the room, right? Part of it was like they take in your sales materials, they talk it up, they tell you they like every part of a process of selling a show is like building up the world. Like what are like the sales materials do something, and then the print materials are supplemental to that. The person who's pitching, they gotta add a little something too, right? Like we can't do everything with one thing. So we stopped selling things in the room during the pandemic, and your materials had to almost be better because that was all they were
Yeah, there's no
looking at.
energy. There's no energy. Now, like when you pitch something in a room, there is an energy. You can feel it. You can feed off it. You can pivot, react. You can read body language.
Yeah, if they watch and they're like, "We're not sure about that," that person can literally, like, have a moment in there where, like, "Okay, but what if, like, this?"
Yeah.
They could change the idea to make it work for them. Like, there's just a lot more flexibility when you're sitting across from a person or, watching them watch it and see what their reactions are, see what they're
Yeah, no,
loving and
COVID
hating.
COVID changed and ruined quite a bit of things in our industry. Let's go back to ideas for a minute though. Where do you get ideas from? Like when you're gonna pitch an idea, or you're gonna come up with an idea, where are you getting ideas from? Like what sparks a concept? Is it the format? Is it premise? Is it people, relationships, geography? What? What do you think
Well,
is the precipice for a good idea?
a lot of it, like, comes from what is happening in the world? Like, what is, like, a trend? Like, back when flipping shows became crazy or whatever, is that what like, people aren't flipping houses now, nobody has any money to buy a house. You're not gonna sell a flipping show. Also, they aren't buying stuff with unproven talent anymore, so just different thing. But, some of it sometimes was I'd come up with a title to entertain me, and I'd build a format from
Work
that.
backwards from a title?
Yeah, like,
That makes sense.
"Girdle me this," or
Was
whatever.
that one?
Yeah, I'd, like
That was a tape we did it was called Griddle Me
it's a
This,
waffle competition,
and it
and
was just what can you griddle? That was the writing that was really good.
that was a really fun tape. Again, you're like, "Why didn't that idea sell?" Like, again, if you try to turn that into, like, multiple seasons, like, it does lose steam.
I
Like,
go back and forth of which I like better, Griddle Me This or Cake versus Pie. Those are 2 tapes
that
we
was
did.
that was
Would you have one which one do you like better? I
I
have
like them for different reasons.
yeah.
Girdle Me This is one of those where I found, like, sound bites that work. Like, I
Yeah.
found good stuff, and
There's a lot
also
of humor in those tapes too.
yeah. But they're similar tapes in the sense of, like
Tonally, yes.
yeah. Cake versus Pie was just, like, a fun idea.
Griddle Me This should have been the sequel to Cake versus Pie. Cake versus Pie, I'm gonna show on my show, in terms of, like, just as an example, and I remember your script being, questions, like some questions are hard and difficult, and I remember them being made on street,
Again, the little
and I
misdirect.
remember saying to you, like, "Can I, like, really take this to the 4 millionth degree?" And you're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I wanna show, like, stars being poured,
We had,
and,
like,
like
a whale
and, like and,
breaching.
like and, like,
Like,
the
that
cosmos,
universe.
how life began," you know what I mean?
No, that was because our note was, like, "Make it bigger," and then you went way too far.
Yeah,
Like,
which is
literally
good.
just how many layers, how many tracks, like, just, like
You're like, "Oh, you
and then,
want
like,
far?
okay,
I'm
now
gonna show the
tone it.
universe being born."
Yeah.
This is a show about
Finding God.
whether cake is better than pie, but we're gonna start with, like, the meaning of life as we know it, with an epic orchestral, score and then shots of the universe. That, like I don't know, I feel like that was so much fun.
That was again, the top of that tape, just like all of our tapes, it's really a quick turn.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a misdirect.
it's like, what was the first line? It was like,
Some
There's a lot
questions
are
are
hard, and people
hard.
are, like, stumped by
Yeah.
stuff, right? "Oh, what?" And, like, but there's a question you can answer
Yeah,
right
like
now.
yes.
And then we did my coworker and I just went out and walked around, like, Soho and, like, literally just, like, ran up to people, were like, "Cake or
Yes.
pie?" and filmed, like, a couple people, and everybody had an opinion.
Opinion, yeah.
So that was just, like, the top of the how many seconds into the tape are we by the time we're done with that? Like,
Oh, yeah, right off the bat, you think this is gonna be some existential question of, like, is God real?
uh,
Is destiny, predetermined? You're like, "No, it's about cake
and
and
then
pie."
in another one,
And
the
that is also where we did the cherry pie,
yeah,
right?
which
That
is
was another one of our music cues. You
what
have to
else did
kinda
you
be like a DJ, and
what
then
else did you put in there? Was it 50 Cent? There was something, yeah.
another track.
Yeah.
Yeah, just all because it's poppy and it's sweet. Like, I know it sounds stupid, but when I think of music and you're dealing with, like, sweets, like, there are certain songs that would, like, I think, audibly emulate that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, pop music is called pop for a reason, You don't put country western really in a food tape, unless it's about Southern cooking maybe or barbecue, right? But,
Yeah.
like, for pies and cakes, like, it's gotta, a Michael Jackson is probably a good artist to throw in there. It just feels right.
I'm sorry, all of your questions, like, again, there's, like, 70 answers to, like, everything you
That's
asked.
alright.
Because, like, we're asking where ideas come from is
Like, listen, in film, they say, like, "Write what you know," or if you're producing a movie on a lower end, they go, "Well, don't make a mafia movie if you don't have access to, like, guns and like, things that you would expect to see in a mafia movie." Like, you look at El Mariachi, right? The Robert Rodriguez film.
got a
That
guitar.
film is worked backwards from what's available in terms of, like, right, I have a guitar. I have, a town, access to shoot in what. So, do you do that in development as well? Do you go, who are the people in my life that I maybe could develop a tape around or maybe
No.
no?
Mm-mm.
Is
It's
that a
never,
mistake?
like because your whole job is to get that access, like, if you don't have it. It rarely comes from something you already have, unless you have a relationship with, like, an actor or a
Well, this
celebrity.
goes back to why I'm friends with weirdos, because when I was developing, like, hey, like someone would be like, "Hey, anybody know someone fresh out of jail?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I got 5."
I mean, I do know, like, a really charming guy that owns a restaurant. I tried to make shows with him, like, that is maybe one example of that, but for the most part, it's like, here's a trend or I mean, they came from everywhere. Like, I'd read, like, what nonfiction books were being published and, like, because 'cause you're always looking for your in into the story. So, like, for one, I read about a book this guy was publishing about his own research into, like, a certain, serial killer that had been very prominent when he was a kid, and every kid in his neighborhood knew about this, and he had a memory that he thought like, he this guy tried to get him into his car once, and he's like, "I think I could have been a victim of that guy." So he had, like and then he had his own kids, and he became very interested in, like, this thing, whatever, and he was investigating it himself. Like, you can't just, like, pick a case and, like, talk about it. Like, you have to have, like, the reason that you're getting into it, right? Um, Sometimes it's networks have asks. They're like, "We need a show like, we need a competition show, or we're really interested in this area, and you just sit there with your team or by yourself at your desk and slam your head into the wall and try to think of like, what could we do that fulfills that brief? A lot of times, again, like with it's a title I come up with that's funny. That's those kinds of things that are gonna stick with people. And like at the time, it was like, well, if you're flipping through the channels and you see this, are you gonna
Yeah.
stop? Um, with, like, a home reno at the time, like not like a competition with, like, existing talent, although you could take existing talent and be like, "What other formats can we do for this person?" Like, the Property Brothers have however many shows, it's like, what else can we do with, Drew and Jonathan? But for the most part, you're like, what are they doing that's different? Like, is this a person that does it is, like, the place where they're doing it, is that something we haven't seen before? Like, oh, they're flipping, like, lake homes on this lake in Alabama or something. That's something we haven't seen. They also have to be, like, super magnetic, right? You're like, they're adorable. She does it with her dad. Is there a different relationship that they have that we haven't seen? Like certain things like that. I mean, sometimes you're on the subway and you see, like, a subway ad that has a pun in it, like, or some wordplay, and you're like, "Oh, that's something." Sometimes you just talk about broader trends, like, if you're like, "Everyone's worried about money right now," or like, oh, sometimes you just, like, go really broad. You're like, "Man, people really love to judge." People love to judge people's parenting, right? That's where, like, Wife Swap came. It's like, we're gonna watch like, how do we get to judge people's parenting? Or people love to judge people's dating life, like, whatever. You're like, "What else do people love to judge?" They love to judge how people do this. Like, how can we turn that into, like, a format
So
or
once you have an idea that you like, what comes next? Pitch deck, what? Like, go through the evolution of, like, idea to
I have
tape.
an idea, I think it's good. You write it up. That's usually step 2, because in the process of writing it up, you see all the holes and flaws with the idea or the places you need to improve. Like, you're trying to strengthen it with every step, right? And I don't wanna come to you and say, "Make a tape," and I don't know what the show is. Like, or I don't know what episode 5 is, like, you wanna, like, know that it's got legs. So you write it up and you make sure that it's got, like, all the elements.
And when you say write up, you talking about writing, like, a pitch deck?
Even not like, it depends, like, it could be just a one sheet, you know? Here's the idea, here's kinda, like, why now, here's what we have to tell the story. Here's a log line that's really solid. Um, you
Yeah,
know?
putting it down on paper, just flushing out the idea. So
Yeah.
after that kind of one sheet or maybe pitch deck,
Then
well, actually, what's included on that? What do you put on that?
well, in a full pitch deck, it kinda depends. If you have a format to explain, you do need to put that. Like, if it's a game show, if it's a competition show, if it's, you have to put the act structure, or the mechanics of the gameplay and, like, examples of what the challenges would be or whatever. Like, you do need that, for the most part. Otherwise, you're just like, "What about a competition about this?" And then they're gonna ask you anyway, so might as well
You
get
have to
ahead
be,
of
like,
that.
bulletproof when it comes to questions and answers of, like, right, networks will look to find holes in your idea or your pitch, and you kinda have to be ready to just
It's not
answer.
even that they're looking to find holes. If they don't understand it or there isn't a clarity of concept, they'll just move on. Like, you don't wanna confuse anybody during the sales process. You don't want them to be like, "I don't get it," or "I don't understand." Like, some competition formats get really convoluted. They'll be like, "And then if they do this, then they have to do that," and you're like, "I don't." You're just like,
You can't follow.
"Yeah."
So in terms of, just trying to explain to people, like, how ideas go from an idea to creation. So idea, flush it out, pitch deck, maybe a one sheet. What's usually next? Casting tape, sizzle, something in
It
in that
depends. You
range?
decide how the best way to pitch it is. With a competition tape, you could maybe just pitch it with really tight paper that's like explains it. Or we make the rip tapes like you and I made for a ton of things that were formatted. If it's talent based, you have to show them the talent. You can't just you can't just tell a an exec to go look at their Instagram page. Like that you're not doing any work.